Hi, and welcome to JavaScript. This is Christian here. In this video, I'll be talking about variables in JavaScript and how you declare variables and the variable scopes in different contexts and so on. So the first thing that you want to do is create a new file, which I did here already. I created a file called variables.html file. It's a HTML5 document. Just to be sure you know what that is. What you see here is actually a list of all the tags that will make up this HTML5 document. Of course, this is all completely optional here. I could take this line out completely and it would still be valid. Okay, so remember that in JavaScript you can embed into your web document in three different ways. One is embed internally using the script tag like this in the body or in the head area, anywhere is fine. Another way is you would use an external file and then do a script here, and the src is equal to, let's just say if I have a folder called main, and then, or I mean JS, inside the JS I have a JS file called main. That's how you would embed it, right? Just like you do with CSS. And a third way is you would do directly to the tag with an event. So our event handler, like the click event. When I click that, do something. I can call it a function, or I can just issue an alert message. Is fine. So let's just say I'm going to call it a function that I can write to handle this action. So I'm going to call a function call maybe show show message or something, right? And then you can terminate that. You put here message to say click to show message. Okay, so that's another way. Three ways. Embed. So in here I can put now the function call show message, right? Also make sure that you spell the words correctly because it is case sensitive. And I could say, alert or just window, right? You can put window alert or just alert is fine because the alert method function is part of the window object. You can say welcome to JavaScript. There's the message. And by convention, I usually always terminate every statement with the semicolon, although it's not required in JavaScript. It's completely optional. But it's always good practice to use it because most languages use semicolon anyway. So it's not only that, it's easy for you to see when you debug your code. You can see that with a semicolon, that's the end of that statement, and so that's really helpful. It's not required with one exception. I mean, there are three different scenario or cases that the browser or the window, the program will actually require you to have it, but um, that's something completely beyond the scope of this class for now. But for now, just say I save this, and here I have embedded my code into this document in three different ways. But of course, I don't have a file called main in the JS folder, so let's create that. I can go into the unit one, right click, and create a new directory, and call it JS. Inside the JS file, create a new file called new.javascript file, call it main, and just click OK. And there's my blank or empty script inside the JS folder, right? Go back to the variables file, save, and then if I want to load this to this window here, this browser, you just go on the right here and then click the Chrome, and there it should be loaded. And then let me just go refresh. You see that there's the message, right? Message box. If I click it, and there's the message welcome to JavaScript, which is this message right here. Okay, so that is how you would do it. You embed JavaScript in your code. I'll leave this here. I'll be doing some code. So now I'm going to go here and then do a few things. I'm going to close this side here. I don't need this for now. So you can just double click this so you have more room. So when I run, I have this window on the right side. You can see the result. Okay. All right. So the first things you want to do is variable declarations. Now remember that this entire document here is what's called the global space, right? For this document alone. Each document or each window you run has a space called the namespace, which is the global space. So right now I have the script tag here, one here, one up here. This one here only loads the external file. So notice it looks very similar here, except I have a source that loads the external file. I can still have this area, you have to put some script in here. Any script I put in here will not be run. Okay, as soon as you run this, the browser renders this file, it runs this line of code, it sees src, it's expecting to load a file. Whether the file exists or not, it doesn't matter. It's going to skip the code in here. This part inside here is used only for browsers that do not support JavaScript. It's kind of rare to find those these days, but there are cases where you actually have the option of turning off JavaScript. So if you turn off JavaScript, then it will not run the script here, and then what you see is it will run the code inside here. Maybe not turn off JavaScript, I should say. It's just some browser does not run the script. Okay, so this is what's called a fallback content. So I could put a message in here. You can do something like, you know, put some code in there, whatever code you want to put in there. That's completely fine. Maybe just for your message, for your information, or whatever, right? So that part is for that purpose. So typically when you link an external file, you don't put anything there. And this one, it can be placed anywhere. You can put it in the head section, put in the body here, or put on the bottom of the page, right there, report the body tag, close it, and you'll see that some pages, some site actually use that option, and you can put anywhere. And there are some reasons why you put your code on the bottom, why you put some on the top, why in the middle, and all over the place, right? There's a reason for that. Because documents, HTML documents is rendered from top to bottom. So if you run your code, so wherever it's being called at, like right here, it's going to load the code here and run the script from this line. So whatever script I have here will be run here. And if some of these tags are not rendered yet in the browser, so it would not be seen. So therefore, sometimes you want to put your code down the bottom after all the buttons, all the tags are rendered on the DOM tree. That's one of the reasons why. And the other reason is because JavaScript takes a lot of time to load. If you have a really huge file and if you have a lot of code to run, then sometimes your site can be quite slow, maybe 2 or 3 seconds slower, right? And you want to put down the bottom such that everything else gets loaded on the screen, and then at the end you load your script, because you don't want to run the script and let your user wait for it, right? That's not the idea here. But of course there are ways to do that now to fix that using the Windows unload. You can force it to wait, and we'll explore that later. So for now, variables. I have a global space here. Okay, variables can be defined in anywhere in your script here. So I have a very common way to declare a variable in JavaScript for the longest time is using the var, keyword. Okay, this is by issuing the command var and then followed by the name of a variable. So as you can see in other videos, if you watch, that in JavaScript you have you know, to conform to certain rules, just like any other language. I could start a variable identifier with the underscore. Okay, I could do that, and that's completely fine. It's a valid variable name. And because of that, I could now say, for example, I could do a document write. Write what? Write that underscore to the browser. Okay, and oddly enough, it works. So I could just go here and then save this, for example, and go to my browser and do a refresh, and you will see that it has an undefined value, because when you declare a variable with the without assigning anything to it like this, you get what's called an undefined value, because JavaScript is a dynamic type language. It's a loosely typed or weakly typed, how you want to call it. It means that you don't have to specify the data type when you declare a variable, right? So that's why I don't have to say, oh, this underscore has to be of type integer. It doesn't have to be that way. Since that's the case, then it does not know what data type it is, so it's assumed that it's undefined, right? So you have undefined. Okay. If you want to assign a value, after that I can say now underscore now has the value of 12. I mean, this is a really weird example, but I just want to show you that it does work in JavaScript. Okay, save that, refresh, and you see that it has 12. And the reason why 12 and this button is in the same line of code is because I did not have any break in there, right? So I have to issue the line break to make this work. Or I could just hide this button completely, okay, which is fine. Um, but let's just say I'm going to go here because, you know, in the code, wherever you define your code, it runs there. So notice that my entire script here from lines 9 through 22 runs right in this space. There's no BR here at all. So if you close this, you'll see that it has the scripts in here. Oops. And then follow my button. So I have the button here, right? So when I render these script to the output, that's why it shows number 12, and there are no BR. So to cross that BR, I have to either put it here, like that, okay, and save. And you can see that now has a line break, right? Undo that. Or you put it in your script, in the code. I can say, write this document. I could do like document.write and then put the BR here. You have to write the BR to be rendered on the browser. Okay, you can see that, you know, the pain of just writing this to produce a BR here versus I could just put that in the HTML code. And this is the neat thing about having this flexibility of embedding or encapsulating data or script in your document, just like you would have done the same thing with JSP and PHP and many others and several others. So now if I save this and go back here, for render, I should get the same result. Oh, actually, I didn't. Well, let's see. I put it before. That's why I had to put it after. I need to cut that, paste it back here. It should be after the yeah, after that the document, right? So now it should work just like before. Okay. Now I'm gonna do an F12 here. Press F12. You see the code here. Usually you will see something like this. I'm using Chrome. So you may see this, or you may see something different. You may look like that, right? So it doesn't matter how you do it. You can also do it. See, you can also reset this. But the elements here, elements window is your DOM tree. Okay, it shows you almost like the source code here. So this is your main window, your view, if you're familiar with the MVC paradigm. And this box here, this window here is your styles and other events, right? Your DOM break tree and properties and so on. The bottom is your console. You may not see this. If you don't see this, you press the escape key. It may look just like that initially, right? If you press escape key, if you press the elements tab, escape key, you see the console here. If you click the console tab here, you see there's just the console window, and you can do some interaction with the view here. Okay, so you'll see this, and you can move this around dock at the bottom, or you can go ahead and let it flow. You flow this around if you have multiple screens, really useful. Okay, so I don't have one for now, so I'm going to dock it to the bottom. And again, so you can see that in the DOM tree here, this window, in the elements window, you see that the script here is your source code. Okay, the output, if you look at it, we're outputting the document here in here 2 times. Document write, and the result of these 2 statements are shown here. BR and then the 12 and then the BR, right? We print the number 12 and then the BR. Okay, you see the DOM tree here. And then because the underscore is a variable in the global space, I can actually interact that inside the console here. If I type in the underscore, you see that it has the value of 12, right? That's what we have here. Okay, so you use this console to interact with the page and do some coding. You do some manipulation here. If you like your script, you change your script. You like it, just copy it, paste into your page. All right, so I'm going to just use the console for now, and let me resize this back to where it was before. Okay, so I just showed you that you can have this underscore for variable name. Okay, you can also have underscore, right, for variable name. And if I save this, you see that if I do a refresh, I still get 12, right? Why is that? Because I use a score here. This is not, it doesn't exist, you may think. Or if I do something like underscore and then, a $sign underscore, that's completely valid too, right? If I save, I still get 12. Just to make sure that really, really works, I put 1, 2, 3 here. Save. Refresh. So I get 1, 2, 3. And you'll be wondering, why is that? Okay. And the reason why is because this is a second way of how you declare variables. You can declare a variable identifier without using the var keyword. So for now, I have two separate identifiers. One is this underscore dollar sign underscore, and one is this underscore itself. Okay, initially I did like this. This way, it just means that I declare a variable identifier called underscore. I did not assign anything to it. So in this case, it would be undefined, right? There's no value. And this line here, now I assign a value. So I initialize, right? The variable of underscore to that. And so I can print the number to the screen. If I do this now, I mean the dollar sign, then this is a new variable completely, a new identifier with undefined. And then this is now, because there's no declaration prior to it, this one falls under this rule by without using var. I can declare a variable without using var just by issuing the variable name or the identifier and set a value. I could do this, or I could say, that's why it works, right? So if I again shows that it does work. If I do this, underscore and then that, if I remove this, for example, if I cut that out, you see that it just had the underscore. Okay, and this is really bizarre, but so it says the underscore is not defined. Okay, so until you initialize it and then give it a value. So this is the second way actually to do it, declare a variable without using the var keyword. But this one just show you that it does work. You can start with the underscore with a dollar sign. You can start with a dollar sign and a dollar like this. It's fine too. You can say 10, and if I change that to dollar, you'll see that it has the value of 10. Okay, so completely cool. Really strange, but it does work. You can have right, any of course number, right? And then of course now that's your usual way, something more common, I would say. You can see that better, 13. Okay, so I mean, stick with this rule, okay, with using numbers and underscore or maybe something like that. So you can say number, if you're using multiple words in your variable name, because a number of, of students, for example. And you use what's called a lower camel case style. So you lowercase the first character, and then you uppercase each of the first character of every other word that you attach to this name. So now I can go here, and then you can see that's still 13, right? So it looks much nicer. And you will see that some people or some programmers who still use an underscore in front, which is fine. If you want to group your identifiers in a certain group, you can do it that way, so that all the underscore has a certain type, belongs to a certain group, right? So it gives you that flexibility, which is nice. So that's optional, but I would just stick with that. If you don't want to use that one, you can also do underscore number of students. You can see how easy it is for you to read that, right? So stick with that rule. All right, so this is using the var. This is using without not using the var at all. I could have all these down here and then not using the var, and that should still be fine. I can just say, for example, string is equal to hello world, famous string in programming. So there it is. I can put string here and print it out, and you see that has hello world right there. Okay. Now the next one is, I'm going to put right above here because I think it's a good place to belong here, is using what's called the let keyword. Okay. Uh, you would do very similar to the var, except you replace it with a let. So I can say let x equals 12. Okay, and then I can print x. Okay, so I can say x is 12 here. All right, and then so let me tell you what the differences are between these three here. It can be very confusing, so make sure you understand the difference between the three. This one here, this is probably the easier one. This one here is what's called the global, has a global scope. Okay, this one has global, unless, or you want to call it super global, I guess, if that, for lack of a better term, scope. That means that, like right now, this code here is in the global space because it's inside a document here and it's outside of a function, right? So therefore it's global. So that means anywhere in the code I can have another script down here at the bottom and then um, write it down here. I should still be able to access that because again, anywhere you right here is still in the global space. I could put document here, write, I could say, what's the other one? We could do like X, right? Or maybe like the string down here. As you can see, it bolds the text. If I save it again, just to make sure you put the BR here. So again, you can do, write BR down here, copy that, put it here just in case. Make sure you do a break line, and then you can see that I have the hello world down here. It's in a global space, so it doesn't matter where I put this one here, above or below the other code, it should still be fine. It's just in a different script tag. Okay. So now this is what's called a super global. That means exists outside of the function. The tricky thing is that anywhere I declare this in your code, as long as you run that code, that line, then that variable identifier exists immediately at that point. Okay, so that's the tricky part. I'll show you what that means. Let's just say that, oh, that's global. Okay, this var here, or this one here is the less tricky one. The let here, this is what's called a local variable, right? Has the local scope. Scope or has a block scope. This is the typical one you will use in most of your languages. Like if you code in Visual Basic or Java, right? You usually do a dim something, and then so if you do a dim x is 12, then that exists only within that scope, right? If you put inside a function or inside another, like if block or case statements, it only exists only inside that block of code, and then once you're out of it, it dies, right? Same thing with Java. Java will int x is 12, right? And then you would wherever it's declared or it's used only exists in that context. So the same thing goes with this lex. Now this is the tricky part. This one here, I want to say something like, I don't have a term for it, but it's more like a local global, has like a local global scope. This is weird because, excuse me, is if you declare this variable inside a function, then in the context of a function like this, then it only exists within a function call, a function statement block. Okay, it does not penetrate outside of the function. So this is the same rule applies to the let. Okay, it does not apply to the one without the global, without the var or the let here. Okay, um, it has that local scope. But then if inside your function you have, if you declared inside a block scope inside a function, then this variable will exist outside of that block, but still be retained contained within the function here. And I'll show what that means. Okay, so this is the easiest one. I'll show you that for now. In JavaScript, you have the option of creating a block scope using a pair of parentheses, which is very similar to some languages like Java, for example, because JavaScript is borrowing a lot of the syntax from Java. So I could move this and put it inside this block here. This one is now local only to this scope. It does not exist outside of that. Okay, as you can see, I print out x down here. I'm going to put that in here, say x, So you can see the value of x, and I put another one here. This is the value of string. So string, this is a concatenator, by the way, the plus here. I'm concatenating two strings, multiple strings. So now if I save this, okay, I didn't change anything here other than just wrapping this inside the curlies here. Save this and refresh. I should get an error message. And here it says x is not defined at line 28. Okay, that's exactly where that line is being called, right? I declare inside here, inside the block code here. But once I run this line here, run line 19, comes back out, now x is gone. It's dead. Okay, removes from memory, and then when I call down here, it doesn't exist. Okay, when I call this one, the x doesn't exist. Remember that even though it doesn't exist, this x here is being treated as a global variable like one of these because I did not declare it. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, right? It exists, it just doesn't being initialized. So if I put here, for example, x is equal to 3, you see that it's no problem, right? X is now 3. This x here is not this x here. This x here, right, is this x. But if I take it out, then in memory, there is an x right here, but it doesn't exist. I know it's really confusing because of the scope here, but that's how it is, right? So you can see that it's in a block scope. It does not work. If I do this, if I declare outside, let x here, and then I don't assign a value, and then what if I do this? Well, I just assign a value. Let's put number 10, well not 10, put like 100 here, big number. Okay, what do you think is going to happen when I print this x out? What should the value be? Okay, let's see. Should be 100, right? So you print out, you get the x 100 here. So this x here is not this x here. It's this x outside because I used a let. That means I redeclare a local variable inside this block. If you want to use this x outside, then you take that out, right? If I do that, so now it's different. The color change is going to show you that it's been written down here. So now if I save it, this should be changed back to 12 because I now override the actual variable x here with a new value of 12. I'm just assigning. After that, I come back out that this x here holds the value of 12 now. So again, back to your typical way of your local variable in the other languages. But as soon as you put let here, then that's completely different variable. Okay, so that is the way how this works for the let. Pretty straightforward. Now, the var here is very different. The var, let me go in here and then, I'm going to change this to just to var. For var here, var, well, maybe not. I should just create a new one up here. I'll use the number of students here, it's fine. I'll just wrap this one here. Number of students, put it inside here. Okay, and then I'll replace this. Well, I'm going to copy this, these two line. Just highlight it and then Control D. Okay. I'll put on top here. I'll put the number of students, and then that's that. I just copy and paste. So number of students. Maybe we can move this all the way to the top. Okay, so you can see better. Okay. Cut that and then put it up here. Okay, so save this and run. You'll see that I have the number of students up here is 13, right? Even though it's enclosed inside a block scope. Hope you see the difference here, right? So this one does not allow it. This one does. So once I declare it inside here, and once I run this statement, from this point on, this variable will be treated like as if it's outside of that scope. And then you would just, it would look like that it's equivalent to that. Okay, so that is the difference between the two. And so I hope that's clear. Okay, once you declare inside a block scope, and it doesn't matter, I can wrap this inside another pair, right, of code. Put that inside here, and it still be fine. It doesn't matter. So you can see it's still. I put a different number here, 130, and you see that it's still 130. Okay, works just fine. So that is the difference between the let, the var, and the global here. What I want to show you was that this part here and this part. So now let's just say, what if I put this inside a function? What if I go here and create a function here called show, just say show, I'll just put here LG for local global show. Okay, and let me take this out. So it has the same information as before. So now, because it's enclosed inside a function, this var cannot be, this variable, it does not exist outside of a function. So that's why you see here it doesn't work. If you run it, it will have an error. It will just say num is not defined, as you can see here, and also the string. And let's just do that by saying I'm going to move this. Well, first we want to call the function, right? So LG show, let's call the function. Once I called it, then it's going to go inside here, initialize that, run that, and it still doesn't work because it's outside of scope. So you can see it still doesn't work. Okay, but let's just say I put these statements inside the function instead right here. Okay, outside of the scope. It's a local scope, it's a block scope instead of function, right? As once I call it, it will still work. It should be fine this time. So here I have the number of students, X, right? Completely fine. And just to show that I put it instead of block scope here, it's fine. But it only exists within the function. Now this one, what about this one here? Let's do a function call. We'll call it, this is the let show. Okay, let me take this out. Okay, let me just remove that for now. Okay, so again, a function, then after that we're going to call it let show, call the function. And as you can see, X is still undefined. So when you run it, you should see that X is not defined on line 45, which is this one here. Okay, so now I'm going to move this, put it inside the function here, just like we did up here. And this should work fine, right? Because it's part of the function. So do a function call, I get my number and show the 100, just like this. And again, by the same example, I'm going to wrap this inside the curly brace, put that inside the local block here. Now it does not exist outside the block, so it should not work. Save, and I get the error again that X is not defined. Okay, so that's the difference between the two here. Okay. Okay, let's do the global here. I'm just going to do the string for this one. Function G show for global, and we'll put this inside here, and then we'll call the function right away. Okay, so the global is this string down here, right? So you can see that if I take this out, if I don't call it, it's inside the string, the function here. If I don't call it, there's no way of getting the string to be initialized. Move it correctly here. So it should still have an error because the string is not defined. Okay, X. Let's fix the X for now. Let's put the X outside. I'll put here, let X be blank, and then we'll initialize that. So X goes away. Now the string is not defined, right? Because that's what we have. It's in the global, but then we don't call it, so therefore it doesn't work. So now as soon as I call this function, it's going to go in here, it's going to look for the string or run this line, initialize it to the hello world, and exits it out. After that, this string becomes active. It's like hoisted out of the function into the global space. and therefore it should exist down here. And I should be able to print that message out like you see here. Okay, so from the point on, it exists as a global variable. So just to show you that if I type in, what string, you see that the message is there. If I type in the variable for um, x, okay, x, as you can see, it's not defined because it's not available in the global space. Let's try the number of students. It's kind of long. Copy that, paste it here, and you can see it's not defined. The only one that is defined in this case is string because it's in global space. Okay, so if I take this out, for example, take the var out of that string of the number of students, refresh the screen, okay, if I type in the var number of students, you see that it exists in the global space, right? Just like the string is, but x is still not in the global space until if I decided to say x is now a global variable inside a function, then now x is global. Well, let's see what happened here. It's not defined. Just save that. What happened here? Implicitly, so I could put again. Let me just take this out completely. Inside there, refresh, and then so now all of them are all exist. The number is exists, x is there, and also string is all there. So I hope that's helpful and clarifying these three different ways of how you can declare variables or identifiers in your JavaScript. And so again, use these sparingly because they will consume your resources. The var is tricky, so make sure you know how to use it. And then it's always safe to use the let, okay, it's to preserve those data. Okay, well, if you have any questions, shoot me an email or post a comment. I'll be more happy to respond. Thank you.